I believe the overall message of any kind of art that you do cannot be to foster violence. It can't. It should not. It can raise uncomfortable questions. It can be provocative. But I do not think at any point of time any work of Picasso's made you want to go out there and start killing people. In fact, quite the opposite.
They're fortunate that our guest today is possibly one of the fittest men in the country, and so it's a privilege to have him here. And that lets us segue straight into our next conversation, which is about somebody who wears many hats. He speaks of himself, actually, sometimes in these Picasso terms: the NGO Rahul, the actor Rahul, the athlete Rahul, I would say the elevated Rahul, which is very difficult to find. Somebody who lives out his life on the principles and terms that he set for himself in an era of frenzied chasing of eyeballs, of popularity, of external matrices of success over 30 years, and we're really celebrating his 30 years in cinema today. He has followed his own drum, picking the scripts that he wants to, doing the films that he would like to, and continuing his other worlds, which are of playing rugby, philanthropic work, social activism, all of that with the kind of, single-eyed focus that is the stuff of epics. Now, if all of that sounds extra salutary, when we have him on stage, it'll bear out why I'm celebrating him the way I am. If you look at his body of work, it began with English August. It's had very unusual films, that he's done, which includes I Am, possibly the most bold and radical portraits of homosexuality on screen. He's played Niyat again, where almost humorously he plays the role of of somebody who's gay. He's played Mr. and Mrs. Iyer. He's done Dil Dhadakne Do. He's played the antagonist in films like Bulbul. And now, most recently, he's played a fantastic role in a very unusual thriller called Berlin, which is about a mute protagonist who was considered a double agent, and he is the security officer that is investigating the story. So in that canvas, to celebrate his new series, as well as 30 years in cinema and all the other hats that he wears, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome on stage Rahul Bose. I have to say, every time I meet Rahul, and I did a conversation with him 5 years ago, but I have to repeat that question, which is that why is a man like this, who has all the right attitudes, all the right elevations, just not taken? This speaks of bad taste for women in India.
I think women in India have impeccable taste. Yeah. I do want to say one thing about the Shiv Nadar Foundation. So I run my own foundation called The Foundation. And we select kids from underserved areas of India. So in the past, I'm talking almost 20 years ago, we went to the Andamans, went to Kashmir, went to Manipur. And some of our Kashmir kids wanted to study in Delhi. So I met Roshni Nadar, and 2 of our Kashmir students studied at Shiv Nadar University for free for 4 years each. And they looked after everything. Roshni is an extraordinary person. The work they're doing is extraordinary. And no, this is not a paid post. This is the truth. And I'm just so grateful for her warmth, her graciousness, and her compassion.
I'm so happy you said that, Rahul. But let me that then cuts across other things that I wanted to say. Let me start with this then. I was going to speak about your cinema, and we'll come to that. But something that you're equally passionate about is rugby, and again, like you've been choosing cinema that's at the kind of outliers of the mainstream, you've spent your life passionate and devoted to a sport that, again, isn't in the kind of frenzied spotlights, So one, what drew you to rugby? And you've also kind of married rugby into, your activism and your philanthropy. So tell us a little bit about that. And actually, just one more, I want to share with you that possibly apart from the Prime Minister, there's only one other person that is, a whole stadium is named after Rahul in Orissa. It's a sports stadium named after Rahul Bose. So we have to ask how that came about.
Well, I beg them not to do it. So I speak to you right now as the president of the Indian Rugby Football Union, which is the National Sports Federation of Rugby. So, no, I didn't do that for any applause. I'm just saying that to sort of draw a continuum between Shoma's question of how did you start with rugby to today. And so I started playing rugby for all the wrong reasons. Here was a sport, after having played cricket like all dutiful Indian boys, and I love the sport. I shifted to rugby at the age of 15, not with an idea to shift. I shifted because it was a sport that you could get dirty legitimately. I mean, your parents couldn't freak out if you came back dirty after playing rugby. Second, you could be as aggressive as you wanted on the field, and it was applauded, as opposed to, this is not quite done, whatever. And third, at least in my school, girls loved blood. They just loved to see their boys bleeding. And I didn't realize that, but it was, it was like an aphrodisiacal red rag to a bull. And so it was win-win-win for me. So that's when I got into it. And I was
why has it turned out so badly for you, Rahul?
How many chats have you started asking the person you've invited, how has life gone so badly for you? Just tell us that,
Why are you still single at this, very accomplished age that you're in?
It could well be the reverse, that it's gone very well for me.
Okay.
That it's gone astoundingly well for me.
The subtext of that is so opposed to the politics you espouse.
Yes. This is true. So, the very next year, the Bombay Gymkhana club where I was playing, the scouts scouted me and said, would you like to play for the club? And then India didn't have a team, it wasn't a national sport, all of that. And so, cut to me just playing at the highest domestic level, which was just 12 clubs playing. And then India got recognized as an official rugby playing nation. In 1998, I played my first test match for India, and I played for India for 11 years. Then did my whatever I could for the sport. But today, as president of the federation, I think that, and I was delivering a speech to about 326 bureaucrats it was a Chintan Shivir organized by the government of India on sport, and it was held last year. And I said it was an 11-minute, there were 4 speakers selected to speak for 11 minutes. And I said just one thing. I said, the fact that sport uplifts the underprivileged is wonderful. The fact that sport gives women a recognition and power where perhaps outside those lines they don't have it is great. The fact that sport is hopefully caste, color, religion blind and is a meritocracy is wonderful. But that is not why a national federation exists. A good sports NGO, and there are many, one of the sterling ones I know is run by my friend Matthew Spacey, who runs Magic Bus. A great sports NGO will do all 3. But the raison d'etre of a federation is to win. If you don't win, nobody's interested. Aditi Ashok did well in golf, suddenly there were eyes on golf. Chirag and Satvik do well, suddenly there are eyes on badminton. Then there's the hockey team does well, and Srijesh is retiring. So if you win, that's your raison d'etre.
So Rahul, I just want to share something with the audience so they resonate with what you're saying. Rahul was sharing with me earlier that, I hope you're right on the statistic, that 40% of Indians actually play rugby, and yet there's absolutely no attention on it. And out of that 40%, 70% are girls, and they come from mostly tribal communities or the most impoverished communities across the country, and they're fantastic at it. So use that lens, Rahul, to tell us,
Sure. So,
what is the vision driving you? Like, what did you experience when you met all these young people?
So the fact that 322 out of 760 districts play rugby in India is nobody knows. Nobody needs to know because we're not winning. Once you start winning, then the lens comes onto your sport. The fact that, and it's not 70%, it's 51-49, the split between women and men in the country. Our women are ranked, now they'll be ranked 10th in Asia. Our men are ranked 15th. So the women are doing better than the men. And we don't do a caste census, obviously. We don't ask those questions. But I can hazard a guess that over half of our 120,000 athletes in the country are from tribal backgrounds. Because the first Rashtriya Janjatiya Khel that happened last year, National Tribal Games, out of 37 states and union territories in India, 15 states had tribal rugby teams. So it's that's the depth at which it's gone to. It happened from 2003 onwards. This is a 20-year story for which I take no credit. But the sport moved very rapidly from being a tiny urban sport in Bombay, Delhi, Bangalore, and Calcutta to becoming this massive rural sport when the first intervention was with a bunch of tribal students in the largest tribal school in the world, the Kalinga Institute of Social Sciences in Odisha. 35,000 kids are fed, clothed, educated, and sheltered from grade 1 to grade 12 for free. Their dining hall is a football field. You know, I mean, they said, come and join with me for breakfast, and I didn't have the stamina to walk around the whole place. So that's why this NGO called Jungle Crows started work there. Not rugby work, just work. And then the founder of Jungle Crows was very, very fond of rugby, began to teach the kids, and about 6 months or 9 months later, these kids won an international student rugby games competition in Paris. And suddenly, everybody cottoned on to the fact that this could be a new demographic because middle-class urban India was gravitating justifiably to badminton, tennis, golf, squash, chess, anywhere that you could, get plaudits and international acclaim for the country. So that's how the shift happened. And today, that shift is...
So why do you back this? And why did it become a rural sport? Very quickly, Rahul, because we have so much else.
Why did it become a rural sport?
Yeah.
Well, it didn't. We had to go where people could play. So we just need a ball to play rugby. That's it. You can play on a stretch of mud. You don't need pads, gloves, coach, all of that. So that is how it began to be picked up by the poorest of the poor. And, the captain of the women's team last year was a tribal girl from... Odisha, from Dhatika district. She's 242 kilometers away from Bhubaneswar. I traveled 6 hours to go meet her and her family. And, she's building a pakka house for her parents based on the money she's getting from the sport. So those are the happy byproducts of building a winning team.
So, Rahul, I'm so glad you're spotlighting this. And you were saying that there's that potential for this to really, that the teams could really win, because you were chatting earlier and you were saying that a lot of, the kids who are playing have immense inner composure. They really know who they are. And, they play with immense strength and
resilience.
With resilience. And that brings me a little bit segueing into cinema, because the one directorial venture that you really undertook was on Purna, which was again a tribal girl. And I don't know how many of you know this story. She's the only tribal girl to have climbed Mount Everest,
She's the youngest girl in history to have climbed Everest. Forget it, tribal, non-tribal, 13 years old.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about her. How did you discover her story? And share the headlights, elevator story of her.
Shobha only wants headlines today. Is basically the fact that this script came to me, and I was supposed to produce it, and then it transpired that I directed it also. But what could be a more winning story to show you that the system works? There was one idealistic IPS officer who was in charge of sport in Telangana and started a cleanup in charge of the educational institutions, the tribal educational institutions, TSW, REIS. And this gentleman, Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar, began to do a cleanup of the sport. The food, the teachers, attendance of teachers, the infrastructure of the schools, cleaning everything up, and started extracurriculars, one of which was mountaineering. And the story goes, and it's a true story, a few kids began to start mountaineering, and otherwise Telangana is flat like this, but Bhongir has this fort, which is on top of a 600-foot rock, and these kids ran up just effortlessly. And so then the idea that they could go further, and he got some money, and they slowly went to Himalayan Mountaineering Institute, blah, blah, blah. And out of them, 2 of them had the money, the funds, and the talent and the skill to go and make it to Everest. And he said, I thought, if a tribal girl reaches Everest, it'll send a message out to every single girl in this country that if you... She was tending her goat 9 months before she climbed Everest.
My God.
In 9 months, this girl reached the top of the world. Remarkable. She's 19 years old now. She's a remarkable person. So I played Dr. R.S. Praveen Kumar. You saw a bit of that in a clip. And it's just for me, Purna brings together all my loves. Cinema, sport, achievement, human achievement, upliftment, empowerment, resilience, all of that. And it just, for me, women, girls, it just brings all my worlds together, which of course was shattered in Dil Dhadakne Do when everybody, when I played that. And I told Zoya, I said, Zoya, NGO Rahul has committed suicide. He's lying there. He's slit his wrists with his bangles, and he's just, he's bleeding to death out there because of what you're making me say.
Rahul was wanting to slit Farhan's wrist and take all his lines, because Farhan was playing.
Thank God Farhan said what he said, because I think it's one of the most viral clips from the film, and it's so important. What he said was, from his lips to God's ears.
Yeah, but that then actually brings me, I just want to say one thing about Purna, because you were saying it, that someone was telling me that the government is planning to now use AI and to use all of this to actually penetrate every village, every kasbah, to start trying and sourcing talented children in sports, and really that power of sports to create immense social mobility and to spotlight how much of talent is just bubbling below without focus and attention on it, So again, like you said, and you've been to, you were telling me earlier, from Ladakh to Kanyakumari to the Andamans to everywhere, focusing on young people who really want to play sports. So I just wanted to salute you for that before moving away to other stuff. So, when you mentioned about Dil Dhadakne Do, you've consistently said that you don't want to do cinema with people who are toxic or whose value systems don't work for you. You don't want to do cinema, except occasionally where the characters are portraying something which is misogynistic. So tell us about...
I don't want to do cinema which your takeaway is that misogyny rules.
Right.
Or your takeaway is that disrespect for human beings rules. No. As long as I can play somebody who is desperately vile, but the overall takeaway from the film is not, I'm fine with that.
So tell us about this kind of latent politics in cinema. How should it express itself? And do you feel that, say, if you're if you're a superstar, you're a well-known, famous actor, say like yourself, yes, you just said your takeaway is not toxic, but let's look at Western cinema. Take Django Unchained, or take There Will Be Blood, Daniel Day-Lewis. I mean, these are masters of their craft. And they play seriously misogynistic characters, Here, when Shahid Kapoor played Kabir Singh, and recently Ranbir played Animal, there's been so much backlash, Do you think that that's too didactic and art should just be art? What do you mean by this latent politics of a cinema?
So, first of all, I haven't seen Kabir Singh or Animal, so that's besides the point. But more importantly, I believe the overall message of any kind of art that you do cannot be to foster violence. It can't. It should not. It can raise uncomfortable questions. It can be provocative. But I do not think at any point of time any work of Picasso's made you want to go out there and start killing people. In fact, quite the opposite. So, whatever.
So how should it play out in a film? Is it the storylines you're saying, or is it the lens? Is it the director's touch?
It has to be the story.
For?
No matter what the lens is.
Like the evil have to be punished, is that
absolutely.
What you're saying?
Absolutely. There's no question. And therefore, if there are films that have been done in the world where evil is not punished, I would never be part of them. Absolutely not. Because I just don't subscribe to... At what cost? For entertainment? Never. There has to be, at the end of it, the takeaway has to have core human values: non-discrimination, inclusivity, respect for other people, compassion, kindness. For sure. For sure.
So
there is absolutely no gray area in this.
Okay. So, that's a pretty strong position to take, and that's probably why you reject a lot of scripts or, people.
Yes, I have, where they're trying to pander to some kind of sentiment about, beating in a war and all. I'm like, what? This is just fostering more hatred. I'm not interested.
So in Bulbul, when you play a man who brutally assaults a woman, tell us what made you pick that script.
Well, obviously, because the takeaway is it's a fiercely feminist film. And you can argue about how it's been portrayed, but it is fiercely feminist in terms of its lens. So I've been part of Chameli, I've been part of Mr. and Mrs. Iyer, I've been part of, Mumbai Matinee, I've been part of many films where the woman is clearly the stronger character, which is fine with me. But when I did, with Bulbul, there were two things, Shoma. Let me never, ever overstate this. I first look at the story, of course, and then the challenge for me as an actor. And if anybody's seen Bulbul, I don't know if anybody's seen Bulbul here, but the challenge as an actor is that playing the Zamindar is pretty straight, but playing the mentally challenged brother who's frozen at the age of 10 in a 40-year-old body, and in that body can procreate, excrete, sleep, and eat like a 40-year-old. But the rest of it is a 10-year-old. So how are you going to approach that? And one of the most difficult moments of my career have been the time when his character rapes Tripti's character to death. She dies. That's how brutal he is with her. And I still remember that, we were on that bed for hours, chatting and then just going back. And I was like, for me, this is so traumatic. How triggering could it be for... You don't have to have been assaulted, molested, or raped to be triggered by something like that, Shoma. It could happen to a boy or a girl or a man or a woman. I told Tripti, I said, Tripti, are you okay? And she was absolutely fine. She was fantastic through that day. And I then said to her, I said, look, the safe word is Rahul. Because when the camera comes on, I'm going to be this animal. And that too an unthinking animal who's just doing something which is hardwired in his 40-year-old brain. He's not doing it as a 10-year-old. These are the 4 things he can do, and he's just going to go for it. And so you won't recognize me. If you do, then I'm acting badly. And if there's a problem, just tell me. Just tap me. Just say Rahul. Say Rahul and it'll go. All of it will go. So it's very, very difficult, but Anvita dealt with that character so beautifully. She's handled the character, both my characters, so beautifully. And I keep saying, I don't know why. Why the director doesn't get the credit for a great performance. Similarly, I don't know why the director doesn't get criticized for a bad performance. Because believe me, if an actor is half good, the director can say, "Thoda zyada hai, kam karo." It's too underplayed, make it a little more vivid, right? And the actor will do it. So if somebody says, "Oh, all she did was scream through the film," what the hell was the director doing?
Yeah.
So why doesn't the director, there should be a lion's share of the credit should go to directors and the debit, if I can use that word.
So, you spoke about this very disturbing sort of role you played. I was teasing you earlier about the fact that when I last met you 6 years ago, for 15 years you had no partner in your life. Is that still continuing, the drought?
Of course it isn't. I'm everywhere. No, but that's where I've come to ignition. How does one say this? The two things on which love rests is respect and laughter. If you can every single day look across the room at your partner and say, she infuriates me, she's just unbearable, but you know what? She's a babe. I respect her. And if you can just laugh at the most ridiculous things, whether it's farting in public or whether it's talking about, something subversive that you've watched on a very intellectual level, if you can laugh together and you fundamentally respect each other, for me, that is love.
Yeah. I think all the women are clapping, the men are like doing a quick self-reflection.
This is love? Are you mad? Come outside, we'll have a drink, and then you tell me what love is.
Yeah. But, so I'm going to ask you a question because we were looking at 30 years of cinema. So if you were a character and if you were sort of assessing yourself, who are you, what are you, what's the footprint you left? But before that, the genesis of this highly idealized, I would say, person in public life. It's not that common. What were the roots? Like, what went into shaping you? And I was, I think you were telling me earlier, but it's almost like a Rocky or Rani story. You're literally the Bengali sort of manuscript of how men are brought up by Bengali homes. So tell us about your parents.
My mother was half Maratha, half Punjabi. My dad didn't have a chance. He wanted me to play cricket with a cap and keep my fair complexion going, and all of that. And she kicked me out of the house and said, "Go be a man." I know it's complicated. Go play rugby
You're
and go
slipping up so much, Rahul.
I know, but this is what she said. I said, "Go be a man. Go play rugby and go box. I mean, just get into it." And
she used to never cook.
there's a beautiful story I must tell you. So mum hit me every day. Every day. Khasmanu kha, pat, one slap. that stuff happened, right? And she said, "Chudiya de tabbar," one more slap. All this happened. Every day. So once I got slapped, and once she's even kicked me. I said, "Mom, why are you kicking me?" She said, "Because you're not reacting to my slaps." So I was laughing, and I got kicked, and I walked off. So this used to happen on a daily basis. So once I got kicked, and I got thrown out of the house. So I sat down downstairs in the building next to the chowkidar, and sitting there, he's like, "Kumud madam?" I said, "Ha." He said, "Ha, ha, theek hai." Now I said, I knew that 6 o'clock Baba would come home, and then, obviously, I would be taken back in a sort of river of love, paternal love. So he came home, came out of the car, and I was sitting, and I obviously put on my most forlorn, abused expression, that whole thing. And this is exactly what he did. He was walking, say I'm there. He was walking, he walked towards me, and there I was with my big eyes, tears hanging from my eyes. And he looked at me and he goes, just like a yes, of course, life must be difficult, but don't worry, you'll make it. He just walked off. I was like, "Baba, where are you going?" He was not messing with his wife, for sure. He was not. No chance. I was called when she asked me to go up. But what happened was, in that family, she never entered the kitchen. She worked, she smoked, she drank. She loved Urdu, Sher-o Shairi. She had a book full of shairs. She used to read that to us. She sang very badly, but she sang all the same. That was my mom. And my dad would cook. I mean, we had a cook, but on Sundays, Saturdays and Sundays, he would make Bangla ranna. He would make chops. He would make stuff from Lucknow, stuff from Calcutta, stuff from Delhi. He was a great cook. Great cook. And he never said, "I'm being gender sensitive. You see, I'm entering the kitchen and your mother is not." It was like breathing. So when I used to go to my friends' houses and I saw their mothers in the kitchen, I would ask, I said, "Is your father ill?" I'm not joking. I would genuinely ask, like, "Why is your father sitting there with a newspaper? Does he have tuberculosis? Is he paralyzed? What is the situation here?" And they were like, "What?" So it was just a great way to grow up. It wasn't perfect. Of course it wasn't perfect. But it was.
This is the most pertinent question. Do you cook?
Of course I don't. I'm nowhere. I'm not even half the guy my father was. I mean, he was such a wonderful, tactile. He had his flaws, but he was so. We used to spend hours on the bed, Didi, Baba, and me, just playing. And Mum was like, "Badan mein na chipko," and she would just walk off. Yeah, she was that. But and so you saw. So we went to her for career advice, and we went to Baba to say, "What should we wear for the wedding?" He was beautifully dressed, man. There are some people in the audience who remember him from his days in Kasoli. So, all of that. So it was just such a beautiful way to be.
Yeah, so it dissolved all gender sort of stereotypes. Yeah. But, again, just to touch on a slightly more, and I would love you to then talk about your idea of feminine, what is feminism, what is gender equity. You were saying earlier when you were talking about playing Bulbul, that out of the 5 really substantive relationships you've had with women in your life, that each one of them had been sexually molested or assaulted, by different kinds of men. One, would you just quickly share that story? And then what does that give a window into of sexual abuse, gender relations in this country? And what has your philanthropy and work been on that?
So I have an organization called HEAL, Help Eradicate Abuse Through Learning, and it's basically dedicated to CSA, and we've been doing it for the last 14 years. We've done about 800 workshops across the country in Hindi, English, and Marathi, online and offline. We go into schools, and we actually do workshops with all age groups from grade 1 to grade 12, or grade 3 to grade 12, with their parents, the staff, the teaching staff, the administrative staff, the canteen, the bus boys, all of them. So the statistics are 2011, a government statistic says that 51.4% of all children have been abused in this country. Now, if you look at 1.4 billion, you're looking at about 500 million children, right? I'm just throwing a number there. So 250 million children being sexually abused is 10 Australias. I mean, it is beyond shocking. It's just unimaginable, right? Now, if you try and think about healing each and every one of those survivors, it takes a whole lifetime. And maybe sometimes it's 2 steps forward and 3 steps back in the healing process. It's traumatic. So what we decided was, Shoma, we would prevent it. That, pardon me saying so, but 250 million, but not more. And so how do we go into schools, colleges, communities, mohallas, everywhere, Zilla Parishads in Pune, and just talk about what it is and what to be watching out for. Because today, one of the greatest causes of child sexual abuse is online. The grooming that happens online. So it's all of that we have embraced and we've come to. Personally, it hasn't surprised me that a lion's share of the women that I have dated or been with have had some history of abuse. You don't have to have had a horrific incident in your life to call it abuse. It could just mean that one man who is, exposing himself every day while you're on your way to work, on your way to school. It's just the trauma.
Yeah, but
who are we to grade trauma into different levels?
What struck me there, though, was that you'd said it was a father, an uncle, a driver,
But that's a statistic from all over the world, that 80 to 90% of all sexual abuse happens with somebody that the survivor knows from that ecosystem.
Right. So, I was asking you that question, that since this is 30 years of cinema, treat yourself as a character, Tell us who Rahul is as a character. What are the things which work? Why is he ended up so badly, and then what are the hidden demons which make him like blood, all that. Give us an assessment of Rahul.
Well, I think that I was in conversation with somebody the other day, not formally, just talking, and they said, we didn't know that you have 2 NGOs and all this work is being done. And I'll answer the question very quickly. And I said, why do you need to know? It's between us and the children and their parents and their communities. Nobody else needs to know. Like, yes, but all of this work has happened and no one knows. I said, but who needs to know? So they said, okay, and all the work you're doing with the federation. I said, who needs to know? When we win, every eyes will be on us. Till then, nobody's interested. So what should we go tom-tomming about? He said, are you serious that you do things without looking at public recognition? And I said, yeah. He said, but why? I said, because it makes me happy. It makes me enormously rich if Shoma and 2 others know about it. That's good. I'm done. That's fine. Similarly with my cinema. I have absolutely no interest what the larger world wants to know about my movies. There are 5 people, come on, all of us know this. There are 5 people you respect. There are 5 people you will listen to in your job. There are 3 people whose advice you will take on relationships. That's it. If they say your work in Berlin was fantastic, done. Or this was what was wrong, you listen. The larger world, where do you go with that? Somebody's had a bad day, they say you were crap in the film. Somebody's dead drunk and say you were fantastic in the film. I wish they would drink more. So, all of that. So where are you going to be oscillating like this, like this insect on the top of a piece of heather, in a storm? No. You just you stand on the ground that you own and you decide that's it. That's where I'm going to stand. So if I was looking at Rahul, I would say props to this guy for being himself. I would much rather cut my arm off than be a social media sensation. I have zero interest. I mean, don't get me started on how I've now been studying what is happening with generations of people who are on social media in terms of their physical and emotional behavior. And the human race is changing, if it hasn't changed already. I mean, we're looking at people who are running for president who are crazed on social media. I mean, the human race is really changing. So that is what this was for? I mean, in the old days, during Rose Day in college, under the cloak of anonymity, you would leave a rose for a woman on her desk. Today, under the cloak of anonymity, so we express love under the cloak of anonymity. Today, under the cloak of anonymity, you express hate.
Yeah.
You don't have your real name on your Twitter handle. This is what's happened to human consciousness. I mean, this is what worries me. Of course, wars and all of that, climate change, but this is the most, we've destroyed it. We've destroyed ourselves. And who pushed us to do this? Nobody. Nobody. But then you and I have discussed before that hate is so attractive in cinema. Hate and violence. And why isn't peace a cinematic, you can't, I'm making a film about peace. You just can't do that. You have to show conflict and all of that. So it's a things to think about as to what kind of species we are.
So, just unfortunately, last two questions, it'll have to be really fast, is that you've spent a lot of time thinking about gender relations, about gender equity. I just want to share with you that on Rahul's sets, when he's either producer, director on a film, he has 3 charters, a green charter, a feminist charter, and a labor charter, so that there's a real structure of equity on his set. So that's amazing, Rahul. But, you've thought about gender equity, and when you were talking about social media, today, there's a huge culture of the body, and women really own that. When you look at young women, accomplished women, people, there was an older generation of women that really focused on moving away from the body and away from a lens on the body. Now, women are very, very conscious of their body, and they're happy to show it, to be provocative with it. Provocative is the wrong word, to celebrate it, etc., on social, elsewhere as well. What do you think about that?
It's her choice.
So what's your definition then of feminism after all of this?
To have a society where you can make your choice. Whether you want to be a dancer in a bar, you want to be a NASA scientist, equality is to give the person the freedom of the choice that men have. What decisions they make is their call. Could be a good or bad one. But are you creating the conditions to give that person the freedom and the security to make a choice to live the life the way they want to, just like boys and men have? Is that the case? That's where you should go. Rest of it is problematic. You make a bad choice, you sink or swim with that. But those are not for us to judge.
So as yourself as an actor, what is it that you're proud of, of having accomplished?
If I have managed in those 52 films and series to make you feel that you were there, to make you feel that this is the truth, and this is not something that is being done just for me, it's not an artifice. If I've made you feel that even for 2 minutes of your life, then I'm blessed. I only want to mine the truth. I want to make it seem that you didn't see anybody acting. You just saw something, and it was. You might not remember the name, you might not remember the story, you might not remember me, but if you remember the feeling that movie gave you 20 years later, I mean, what greater gift could there be?
That's actually a beautiful note to end on, Rahul, but I do have one last question, and it may sound a bit facetious, but I think it's an important one.
It's going to be facetious for sure.
Is that the way you've been describing your internal processes and your way of thinking, you really should come across as an ideal man. But the fact that 5 women have left you, to my knowledge, no, but I'm coming to a serious question. One is that, currently do you have a relationship? But more than that, what is it, and I'm really asking this because it'll give insight into why do relationships still fail, So yourself as a man, if you were to take responsibility for those relationships breaking up, aap mein kami kya tha?
No, I think, first of all, I'm not seeing anyone right now. It'll change in 5 minutes. Secondly, those relationships were glorious, but they wanted it to be to result in a longer union, which would obviously mean a formalization like marriage or something like that. And I truly wasn't in that space to do that. And look, you're going to run a federation, you're going to do your films, you're going to run 2 NGOs, and literally the time I have to socialize is maybe 4 or 5 days in a year. But it doesn't mean I'm unhappy for the rest 360. I'm ecstatic. I keep saying my life is a slow, continuous ecstasy. But is it fair to any human being to say, I want to start something with you and I'll meet you for 5 days a year? It's outrageously disrespectful. So why would I even go there? So I shed hot tears on my pillow every night, Shoma.
Okay. But that's art lived on its own terms and in service of art. Thank you very much for being here, Rahul. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
It's always a pleasure. Thanks, Shoma.